back. Thanks a lot for staying with us. Some updates now coming in from the G20 summit, which is taking place in Bali, Indonesia. We're understanding on the sidelines of this summit, you have Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and those visuals on your screens. Remember, this is a hectic day for the Prime Minister. Many such bilaterals on the agenda. As of now, meeting the Australian Prime Minister. My colleague Abhishek now joining us from Bali in Indonesia. Abhishek, any more details that you're picking up or what is expected as far as the agenda of this bilateral is concerned?
So Prime Minister Modi had a lot of bilaterals in the last 2 hours. He has met Indonesian President, he has met the French President also over the lunch, and then Singapore Prime Minister held a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Modi. Currently, the meeting with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is underway. We know that India and Australia have engagements at multiple levels, at multiple platforms as well, because we have seen recently how the Quad has become more important security architecture in this region, and India, Australia, USA and Japan are part of those Quad groupings, which also aspires to expand and include more countries for the better and ruthless order in the Indo-Pacific region. In that context, this becomes really important. Also, recently we have seen how India has been supporting AUKUS, that is a tri-nation grouping of UK, USA and Australia recently. And we have seen Indian representatives at International Atomic Energy Association also helping Australia to not get shot down by Chinese protests over the latest nuclear fuel submarine that Australia is acquiring from USA. So in that context, there has been multiple engagements at at various places, diplomatic level with Australia, and India has always been supportive of Australia's need because in a way it also serves India's cause at having a very ruthless order in Indo-Pacific. Chinese aggression in the recent years has become a reason of concern for the countries who fall in the Pacific coastline.
Okay, Abhishek, I'll just request you to stay on with us. Some other updates also now coming in. Now, ahead of the meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, you've got UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who's gone on to say that there is excitement about India taking over the presidency at the G20. We remain committed to trade deal with India, but we need to get these things right. Abhishek continues to be with us. Abhishek, we've already seen a new visa scheme that had been announced post that interaction of Prime Minister Modi with Rishi Sunak. Ahead of this bilateral, what are we hearing from the UK?
I think clearly the UK Prime Minister has been one of the most active ever since he's been elected, and this would be the first bilateral that Prime Minister Modi will be having with his UK counterpart. There is lot on the agenda because in the recent times we have seen some risks coming in terms of Indians living in England because of the recent remarks by the government who has said that Indians are the most likely to overstay, and the number of Indians overstaying the UK visa in UK is the highest. That has not gone down well with Indian diplomats, and there was some sort of concern also whether the relationship will be how good or bad it will be. But now it's like with Rishi Sunak's latest announcement of 3,000 visa for Indians and a reciprocation by India for 3,000 visa for the UK citizens as young as 18 to 13 years old for multiple opportunities, professional opportunities in cultural sector. In some ways, going to enhance the people-to-people exchange between the two countries. That will also boost the bilateral trade.
Okay.
UK is also a permanent member at the National Security Council, where it has always been kind of supporting of India's cause in terms of whenever it has become an issue at the National Security Council.
Okay, Abhishek, I'll just request you to stay on with us. Our managing editor, Zaka Jacob, also now joining us from our newsroom. Zaka, when Rishi Sunak says that we're committed to trade deal with India, but it needs to get these things right, one, what does it mean? Because remember, in the backdrop of what we've seen, India and Britain had launched negotiations for the FTA in the month of Jan. All of that was supposed to conclude by the 24th of October, but it was delayed because of events that were taking place in the United Kingdom. The timing of when this comment is being made, how should we see it?
And it comes just before his bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Modi. It will be the first time that both men will be meeting each other as prime ministers. I think the FTA, look, both sides are certainly committed to the FTA, no doubt about it. In fact, when Boris Johnson was prime minister, he came to India back in April. They had set a timeline, and publicly Boris Johnson had said that they want to wrap up the FTA negotiations by Diwali. That was not to be, not least because of the political turmoil in the UK. You had multiple prime ministers. Johnson was ousted. Liz Truss became prime minister. And now, of course, Rishi Sunak is the prime minister. But I think there are divisions within the UK cabinet as well. You heard Suella Braverman, for example, the Home Secretary, raising publicly concerns about Indians overstaying their visas. So that, I think, has been a big sticking point. Because remember, even for the Conservative government in the UK, immigration is a big issue. I mean, this is a government that came to power on the back of Brexit. So immigration has been a big talking point in the UK, particularly for the Conservative voters. So Rishi Sunak, while on the one hand, he is saying that, yes, these 3,000 visas, and 3,000 is not a large number. I mean,
correct.
There are lakhs and lakhs of people who even go there as tourists, Indians who go there as tourists. I think anywhere between 500,000 to a million who go to the UK, at least pre-COVID. The point simply is that he also has to play the domestic constituencies. He also has to play to the domestic constituencies, which is why he's saying that it's important to get these things right. The biggest concern from the UK's point of view is about visas, about immigration, and whether this FTA will come across as allowing Indian workers, particularly in IT and other high-tech sectors, to be given a free pass of some kind to come and work in the UK. I think that's the concern for not just for Sunak, but for this Conservative government.
Zach, I'll request you to stay on with us. Our colleague Sanjay Suri also now joining us live on the broadcast from the United Kingdom. Sanjay, how should we read this statement, especially the timing of when this is coming, just shortly before that bilateral is supposed to take place with the Prime Minister?
Well, it doesn't sound very encouraging. He said we need to get these things right, which of course suggests that these things are not right at the moment, and we believe they were. The agreement on the FTA was almost done and dusted by Diwali. It's the new government that has raised question marks, and those biggest of the question marks relate to matters of immigration. There is some concern in the UK that they will not accept that part of the FTA that had in its earlier draft, provided for a degree of free movement of Indian professionals to Britain. The fact is that Rishi Sunak is pledged in his election campaign to link any trade deal with migration issues. That is number 7 of his 10-point pledge. And in relation to India, that will mean that he will want India to take back illegal migrants or undocumented migrants, as you would call them, on and make that conditional to a trade deal. So there is some to and fro going on clearly on that front, and this apparently tokenistic move to have 3,000 people coming in as an exchange is some sort of a sop to the Indian government that yes, we are allowing some movement, but the Indian government clearly is looking for very much more than that and not for this tokenistic movement.
I agree with the point that you're making, and even Zaka was hinting on something similar, that this is now being seen as a token move. Abhishek, I want to